Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, football fans across the country and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall. Clay, Ohio State at Washington, first time since 2007. Are you fired up for it?
I am fired up, honored to be alongside the longest standing member of the Buckeye media beat. And you're about to make a trip to Seattle to take in your fifth, I believe, meeting between the Buckeyes and the Huskies. And
actually more than that, but
my
go ahead.
Gosh, Washington sitting on a 22-game home winning streak. Can the Buckeyes break that incredible run?
Washington was really good last year at home and not that good on the road. You know, first year under Jed Fish, a year after they had played for the national championship. You know, people don't understand. I don't think people are giving Washington enough credit just from a tradition standpoint and legacy standpoint. But that was a year after Kalen DeBoer left to go to Alabama.
Right.
Michael Penix Jr., whom I voted for the Heisman Trophy. He was my number one vote on my list, and that was the 2023 team. 2024 was a reshaping of the program under Jed Fish. And by the way, my guest on this show, or on the tail end of this show, is going to be with Pat Chun, the athletic director at Washington, who took over in 2024 also. He made that jump from Washington State to Washington.
From Pullman to Seattle.
Yeah, which is kind of like going from really from a rivalry standpoint, kind of like going from Auburn to Alabama to become the athletic director.
I know.
And he didn't even look. He didn't even look in the rearview mirror as he pulled out of Pullman. But that's kind of alliteration there, almost pulled out of Pullman. But the bottom line is, we have a nice, because you and I have known Pat Chun for several decades now. He was an associate athletic director at Ohio State. Before that, he worked in the sports information office. And that's where he and I hooked up. And I liked him from the get-go, man. I always liked Pat Chun. And so he moved up the ranks. He was in from associate athletic director at Ohio State to Florida Atlantic athletic director. He hired Lane Kiffin, gave Lane Kiffin his a restart in head coaching. Yes. Then he moved from there to Washington State, worked with Mike Leach at Washington State. And then like I said, 2 years ago, just when Washington was making this move to the Big Ten conference, surprisingly, along with Oregon, he was the athletic director at Washington. And now here we are sitting here, and we reminisce about a lot of things. And while he's sitting in one of his mini offices there at the University of Washington, sitting there in the stadium, gives a great view of the stadium at one point in the interview. But we talk about a lot of things. But going back to that, I wanted to hit on a couple of things, though, before we get to that aspect. You want to say something real quick? You look like you're very eager to say something to me.
No, but good for him that he was able to, because Washington State in the Pac 12, 14, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Was just obliterated. And I'm glad he got the opportunity at UW, because I think he's a tremendous administrator, fundraiser. He's a leader. And,
yes.
As you said, and Pat was one, as we were talking, one of the first people I met in the sports information area, and it was clear he wasn't going to be done there, that he was on the fast track to athletic director.
Yeah, and past that, though, this does have a big game feel to it, doesn't it? Don't you? I mean,
yeah, I think, we're back into a very key road game for Ohio State to kind of stay ahead of the chains, stay undefeated, stay atop the polls, the whole bit. And I think people, because of that kind of robust line, 8.5 or whatever it is, they're like, oh, okay, it'll be close for a while. But no, it's concerning.
Yeah.
I think they're good enough to make you sweat.
Well, it's really funny because in the preseason, ever since last year ended, it's been preseason, right?
I guess.
No. Oh, what are they going to do this year?
Mm-hmm.
After coming off a national championship, what are they going to do this year? But the bottom line is, it was like, I thought, overlooked when you started looking at the schedule. A lot of people, I kept mentioning the game at Washington because I know it's a long way to go to get to the game. Ohio State's leaving on a Thursday, which is rare for them to go in essence, but they're not really going 2 days ahead of time. They're going a night ahead of time.
Right.
Spend the night in Washington, wake up the next day on Friday, do a little run through, do their best Fridays in football out there where they do all kinds of games, etc. Games, all sorts. That's from Mary Poppins.
Got to decompress.
Play games, all sorts. And then and get ready for the game on Saturday. They pretty much stay on Eastern Daylight Saving Time, which is smart thing to do from a body clock standpoint as much as they can. So we'll see if they're ready to go. As Ryan Day said earlier in the week, he thought they were ready to go when they played at Oregon last year. I mean, they came out with velocity. They played hard, but so did Oregon. And sometimes, the other team just gets an advantage in one form or fashion and keeps pounding on. We saw Denzel Burke had a tough second quarter at Oregon last year. We'll see if Washington can make one of Ohio State's corners have a tough quarter.
Right.
I mean, it's all about playing the game and being ready to play the game. So I think they feel good about their idea of going out there. They're the number one team in the country, as you said. And the funny thing about it is, I mean, Ryan Day touched on this also, and we had sound from that, which has now been lost in our archive here. But just basically, you're playing to win the game, to take the W away from Washington and leave them Ashington as you leave town.
That's it. That's the only purpose.
But that's not really it, as he pointed out, because other people are going to be watching. Well, did you beat Washington the way you should have? Because style points do still matter. I mean, people don't understand that, but the main thing is get the W. But then past that, in December when the playoff committee is looking at seeding teams, they're going to look at how did you play on the road at Washington? Did you win like you should have? I mean, but if you've got a couple of teams that are undefeated and you're trying to decide between the two, which is unfortunate because when they get to the NFL model finally in their playoffs, which you got to think is coming sooner rather than later, that will matter less and less. But you know what? It will still matter on whether you're considered to be one of the at-large teams added to the field. Well, who did you beat and how did you beat them? And where did you beat them? That's going to come into play. So, but the bottom line is, number one, get the W, leave Ashington in your rearview mirror and move on. So with that said, I asked a couple of the players, one of them being Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver for Ohio State. If you've never heard his name, shame on you.
That's right.
And also Carson Hinzman, Ohio State's center, who snapped the ball in big-time atmospheres, has played in big-time atmospheres like at Penn State last year when he got back on the beam there and was part of the offensive line after injuries hurt the offensive line. He had been the starter the year before at center, so he played at Michigan. He's been in loud places to play. And but the bottom line is, I was asking them about how their quarterback, first-year starting quarterback, Julian Sayin, is going to handle that atmosphere. I'm trying to remember. You've been out there for a game, right?
Yes.
At least one or two.
Yes. One.
In 07? Yeah.
Yeah. And Ohio State handled them. But I was struck by the configuration. I was struck by the passion of the fans. I was struck by the body of water that you can sailgate into Husky Stadium. It's a very cool place and a cool trip. And Ohio State, a lot of these guys never probably been there, so it would be very eye-opening for them because it is a very different part of the country.
Yeah, I think
that's my TripAdvisor guide for you.
I think the only two guys on the plane, at least player or coach-wise, that have been there are I'm sure I'm wrong. Maybe Carlos Lachlan was there. I'm trying to remember where they played, where Oregon played Washington. Yeah.
Right.
Try to keep your hand from in front of the camera, by the way. I don't know any other way of telling you that, but that
might improve
the camera's right in front of you. Do you see the camera?
Tim, that might improve the picture.
Yeah, it does improve your face. I got to say that much. But Carlos Lachlan may or may not have gone there. I can't remember a couple of years ago when he was at Oregon. But James Laurinaitis and Brian Hartline, like you talked about, so it's an interesting place. So, I asked Jeremiah Smith about playing at a place like that, that he's never been to. Are you curious just as a tourist almost, And he said, yeah, it is cool to play in these places that are held in high esteem from a standpoint of setting. Environment is the word Ryan Day uses to talk about these kind of things, and that are famous for their environment, right?
The adventure of life.
Yeah.
I mean, you play for Ohio State, you see the world sometimes.
Yeah. Sailgating, by the way, I bring that up, or Pat Chun brings it up, because I'll be honest with you, I had never heard that term, even though I've been out there 3 times previous to cover Ohio State games there, starting in '86. Like I told you, in '86, when I first went out there, only one of the grandstands was covered. It's not really totally covered, but it's got that awning more than anything else hanging over it. Huge awning. And then right after Ohio State played there in '86, and Ohio State got bushwhacked 40-7 in that game. And I remember getting on the airplane. We had our own airplanes back then at the Columbus Dispatch, and Ohio State had been beaten by Alabama in the kickoff classic that year, 16-10, I think it was, at the Meadowlands before that game, like 9 or 10 days before that game, and then they got beat 40-7, and were never really in that game. And I just kind of opined, and whatever I wrote the next day is Earl Bruce, is he in trouble? I mean, it didn't look good.
Wow.
Because they didn't look competitive. And then they won 9 in a row.
Well, there you go.
Played Michigan in '86. Do you remember that game? You don't remember that game. That was when Jim Harbaugh guaranteed victory.
Yep.
And Michigan beat them. Remember Matt Francis' field goal went wide left. It was kind of a longish field goal in the 40 yards plus range, but went wide left, and Michigan beat Ohio State, it's 26-24. So Michigan goes to the Rose Bowl, wins the Big Ten championship. Ohio State goes to the Cotton Bowl, beats Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I won't get into all the details, but I think Chris Spielman had 2 interceptions in that game down the line.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray's dad, Kevin Murray, was the quarterback for Texas A&M at that point. But
historian.
No, I was there. But the point was they didn't have that upper. Now the next year they started building that new upper deck and awning on the north side. The field is laid out east-west, and in Washington they started building the new upper deck and awning for the west side, and it collapsed during construction. And they were lucky it didn't kill somebody, didn't even hurt anybody. I don't think it just everybody got away because something started buckling. Now you hear or something probably, and wait a minute. Steel is not supposed to make that noise after it's up. So, but the bottom line is it collapsed, but they still got it built in time for the '87 season. So in '86, they look like in '94 when Ohio State went out there again, they got beat. They got beat. And I remember Terry Glenn coming in the day after the team arrived because there was something to do with his academics. They got cleared up, and he flew in by himself, or with an escort, at least from Ohio State, and they got beat in that game. And then of course in '07 they took care of business against Ty Willingham and the Huskies. I think Jake Locker the quarterback.
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
And
his stats were pretty good, but they only amounted to 14 points.
Right. That's how fast time flies, man. And he's considered the next best thing, great thing coming.
Never dual threat.
Never panned out in the NFL as the next best thing. But I digress. Bottom line is that now Ohio State, and of course Washington has played at Ohio State several times in the interims.
95.
Eddie
went. That was part of the Heisman campaign.
That was big. Was that 95 or 93?
I just remember 95 was my first
year. When was Big Daddy Dan Wilkinson?
That had to be 90. That was earlier.
I think that was 93. I think it was a night game because I was covering the IndyCar race. Was on the same weekend at Mid-Ohio. But I digress. It doesn't matter. Bottom line is this has been a fairly interesting series because obviously the last time these teams played was in the Rose Bowl after the 2018 season, which ended up being Urban Meyer's final game as the head coach of Ohio State, his final game as a college head coach. And he left with one of the great winning percentages of all time and ceremonially turned the whistle over to Ryan Day.
That's right.
In the post-game locker room. Ryan Day, of course, head coached the first 3 games of that year and all of preseason camp in place of Urban Meyer, who was on suspension for the whole Zach Smith and his wife, all of that rigmarole. And And, you know, I don't want to get in on that again. Wow. Just whatever.
Exactly.
I've talked about that before. I'm pausing only because I don't want to, because it makes me mad to think about everything that was misrepresented in that whole thing and then taken and it was run with. And then, you know, them hiring an outside firm, which did very little, if any, investigation, in my opinion. They spent a lot of money on it, right on down the line. Michael Drake is no longer the president at Ohio State, and that's enough. Bottom line is, going back to what we were saying, or what I was saying. I guess I'm hogging this, right? But that was the last time these teams played. You know, Chris Peterson was the head coach at Washington. Now he's on television, just like Urban Meyer is. It's funny how time flies. Kalen DeBoer, you know, became the head coach there. Got his team to the national championship game. Moved to Alabama. How's that going, Kalen? I mean, we'll find out this weekend when they take on Georgia.
Let me digress. When I think of Chris Peterson, it's Boise State against Oklahoma, that incredible play, and then the proposal on the field with the player and cheerleader. And Chris Peterson had a great run. He found his niche and surprisingly got out of the game. Not completely, but still reporting, I guess. But he was a compelling figure in college football.
Yeah, I covered that game because I went out early.
Really, you were there?
Well, Ohio State went out early to get ready for to play Florida in the national championship game in the same stadium. You know, University of Phoenix Stadium, which I've always thought is funny because it's a dome. Number one, and number two, University of Phoenix didn't have a football team, but they had naming rights because they were making so much money on online.
On their
video, I don't know whatever's going on with this stupid system there. It just came back on, but the bottom line is, I covered that game, and Chris Peterson was an interesting. They ran every trick play known to man in that game and got back into it against Adrian Peterson in Oklahoma, and ended up pulling it out. What a great finish! But I digress. Let's get to what's coming. Yeah, because I asked, among other things, we had Jeremiah Smith available to us earlier this week. Ohio State's All-American, going to be, preseason All-American, considered maybe the best offensive player in the country, where you look. But just talking about a couple of things, including how he thinks Julian Sayin is going to handle things on the road, in his first on-the-road start. Everything's a new thing, right, for a starter. By the way, he's in his second year in college football, and I keep reminding people, so was Rex Kern in 1968.
All right.
Second year, you've been in college for a while. You've been around the program for a while. If you got the Jimmies and the Joes around you, and the Jeremiahs,
look out,
and the Bo Jacksons, and the
that's right,
and the C.J. Donaldsons, and the James Peoples, et cetera. You can go in the Carnell Tates. He just didn't have a J in his name, but you can go places, right? So let's get to let's kind of get to what Jeremiah Smith had to say.
Games that's changed about Julian, maybe in the huddle, maybe on the sideline. I mean, have you seen him become more and more of a leader? How would you describe it?
Yeah, like you say, he become more of a leader, using his voice a lot more. Just taking the command of the huddle. Want to go out there and be the best version of himself each and every game. So me, kind of just like me, just want to do everything right. So I'm very proud of him.
By the way, right after that, my buddy Dan Hope asked him about growing up with his brother, who just committed to Ohio State.
Said he was proud.
Yeah.
What did he just say there? He's using what a lot more? I couldn't quite.
I don't remember now. But I'm 71.
He's relying on others to assist.
Yeah, but the bottom line is he's taking command. It's really funny because I've got Carson Hinzman here and coming up in a second talking about how he was in that opener against Texas. I'm talking about Julian Sayin, like on the field or getting ready to go on the field, and how much he's changed, and he's so important.
Growth, transformation.
This is like what I'm going to say next is like saying the sun is hot, but it's so important for your quarterback to be as cool as he can be in an environment like they're walking into, which Pat Chun claims is the loudest environment in college football. Of course, there's an argument there with Oregon. maybe with Penn State, maybe with folks who come in or players who come in and play at the Ohio State University Stadium, Ohio Stadium, about how loud environments are in college football. But the bottom line is it's important for your quarterback, not of all people, not to be flustered. And so talked with Carson Hinzman a little bit about that. I had some other sound bites I was going to run, but for some reason or other, they're not going through our manifold here and getting to the engine, which is the most important part of it, right? Is being fed to the engine from a, what do you want to call it? From a fuel injector standpoint.
We'll get the pit crew.
Although a fuel injector doesn't have a carburetor. I know that. Don't text me on that. I understand that. They have an air input, an air body, and fuel injection. But I digress. Let's get to what Carson Hinzman had to say about the maturation, the fast maturation.
Yes.
Of
in 3 games
of Julian Sayin, Ohio State's quarterback par excellence.
Julian feel like the leader of this offense now than maybe 3 games ago.
He's been a lot better. I mean, with his
give me an example. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like his vocality and stuff like that. I mean, I know like the Texas game, I went out there and I'm like, it's kind of like saying a couple words, whatever for the guys. I'm like, all right, Jules, what you got? He's like, I don't know. but like now, I mean, he's getting in the circles, he's getting fired up. He's definitely come out of his, his shell a little bit more. And so, I mean, obviously he's a gunslinger. He can play. Obviously, we have trust in what he does, and just for him to trust us and trust the rest of the team to protect him and get his job done, make his life easier, I think is important, and I think we're being able to do that.
I don't mean to lead you down this path, but has he been a little better than you thought he would be? How would you rate that?
I expect him to be the best, and he's done exactly what my expectation is. I mean, he's a gunslinger. He goes up there and he might be a young guy, but he definitely commands a lot, and he commands the offense really well.
By the way, I like Carson Hinzman. I don't know if I told you that. I also like his dad. I mean, but he grew up on a dairy farm up in Wisconsin. He is, what do they call that when you're just brute strong to begin with? Country strong.
Yeah, no doubt.
Farm strong.
Tailor-made for the Wisconsin offensive line.
Hey, that could be my nickname. That could be my nickname for him, Lance Farmstrong. But
for his teammates to call him a gunslinger, that tells him what they think of him. In other words, you got swag, you can throw it, you can find the man, you can sling it, you can move this team. I just think that's a very complimentary thing, as long as you don't start throwing picks. But it says you have a gusto for the position and can move the Buckeye offense.
Amen. Everything Clay just said times 2. That's exactly correct, Clay. And we'll see how they handle the noise. Really, control of the noise is in the Buckeyes' hands when you think about it.
Well, the visiting team has to shut them up.
Because, exactly, if you go out and score, if you can score twice on them
early,
it's a different stadium. And that's the way it is. Heck, that's even the way it is at Ohio Stadium, really, when you think about it. And yeah, it is so key. But you'll hear from my conversation with Pat Chun here in a minute. I mean, this is a red letter game for Washington. It's been on the calendar for a while now. They're expecting a raucous crowd. They're expecting obviously a capacity crowd, but it's a lot different with Ohio State coming in than maybe a Purdue or a Northwestern. Just like it is at Ohio Stadium. And then on top of that, like he points out, it's the number 1 team in the country coming to town.
That's everything.
Well, it's everything, because then you've got on the flip side of it, Washington is 3-0
against no one.
Well, Washington State, their rival, the Apple Cup,
but
they turned it into the Applesauce Cup there in the 4th quarter when they scored Damon Williams, their very talented playmaking dual threat quarterback, who's about they say 5'11". We'll see if in fact if I get to talk to him after the game, because I'm 6'2". I kind of judge people where my eyeballs hit them. You know what I mean?
But Washington actually apologized.
But my point is, he's a hell of a player. 3 of his 4 touchdowns, I think, 3 of his 4 touchdown passes came in the 4th quarter of that game when they just spurted on them and won 50-24, whatever the final
59-24.
59-24. But would you go say Washington what? Apologize?
Well, they apologized for a late touchdown pass,
right?
Because the game was out of control.
Right.
35 point game or whatever.
Right.
So they were still throwing it. And so
got to work on that offense, man.
So they humbled. Yeah. The Cup is Washington State, maybe a little bit of a shell of them, what they used to be, but
yes,
you're right. They have not been in a challenge. And I don't know do you think talent equates here? I don't think you do.
I think it equates in some. I think
in some days.
I think it's in some spots. It's pretty close. Their defensive line is interesting to me. It's big, and it makes plays, but they still gave up 24 points against Washington State. Their secondary, I think there are things that can be had there, and one of the reasons is because they insist on playing a lot of man coverage.
Right.
And man, I'm so upset that I wasn't able to load that soundbite from Jeremiah Smith when I asked him at the end. We were talking about kind of defense that play, and I said, I'm just paraphrasing there. He said something. I said, boy, you kind of look forward to man coverage, right? And he goes, basically, yeah. He said it in a different way.
Yeah.
But, yeah, right. I mean, everybody's talking about their big corners. Well, Jeremiah Smith is 6'3", 6'4", a big dude in every stretch of the imagination. And
plays big.
And usually a big wide receiver is, I don't know how to put this, usually more athletically, just a tad maybe gifted than a big cornerback. Because there's a reason why. There's a reason why way back in the day somebody put Jeremiah Smith at wide receiver instead of cornerback. Now he probably played both ways at some points in his high school or previous to that career because he was a great athlete. But he's champing at the bit there. I think Carnell Tate is too, because both of these guys are big receivers. They're not, Ohio State really maybe the shortest receiver on their roster right now, or at least who would play, is probably Brandon Ennis.
I would think so.
And, Quincy Porter's a big dude. Mylan Graham's a big dude. Right on down the line. And I think Ohio State feels pretty good about the matchups there if they can give Julian Sayin time. And then, of course, we haven't even talked about the tight ends. But Washington's going to be a handful in the sense of they can hit you. They can hit you with the running back situation. They can hit you with the wide receiver, Denzel Boston, who I think is a son of David Boston, but I have never gotten that totally clarified. Former Ohio State wide receiver, but he was around a couple of years ago when they made their run to the national championship game. Of course, he was there in essence one of their top receivers last year, but he's an interesting guy to watch. And then back to what we were talking about their corners. They have a corner who transferred from Arizona who's pretty good, but he's had bruised ribs or something and I don't think he even played last week.
And Jeremiah thought he was going to play this week.
Right. I think Jed Fish indicated, the Washington head coach indicated there's a chance he could play. So, but their linebacker of repute, whose name escapes right now, who's pretty good, is not going to play. We understand it. So there are all kinds of things where Ohio State can attack if they can get to it, if they can handle the Washington defensive front four. And so it always comes down to that, and vice versa. Can Washington handle Ohio State's front five? Meaning you got to think Ohio State's going to have somebody hanging around, keeping an eye on Damon Williams, the way he can run around and do things.
Got to be a spy. Whether that's Caleb Downs or whether that's
as
Arvell.
As Caleb Downs said when I asked him about that, one of the things you have to keep in mind is, and he used this term, and it's funny because that's exactly what comes to mind when I think about it, is you want your front four with a guy that can scramble like Damon Williams can and run. You want them, he used this word cage. You want them to create a cage, not a get upfield at all costs kind of assault on the pocket, but a more of a cage to where if he does bail, he has to bail out the backside.
Containment.
But you don't want him like stepping up and going like a running back when he occasionally. And then if you have a fifth guy spying him, that doesn't mean the spy is always going to make the play, but you always want a guy like that changing direction, to allow the posse
stop and
to
start.
show up. The volunteer tackle department to show up then. And so that's the whole key. He's going to make some plays. He's too damn good not to make some plays.
He is.
But, are they going to be enough to keep them in the game or win the game for them? That's the big cue, because obviously we know Ohio State has given up 2 touchdowns in the first 3 games of the year and stopped. They had a goal line stand, which thwarted one attempt by Texas. Had another one where Davis Nigbanosa knocked the ball down in the corner, another Texas attempt, and really, with the exception of a terribly missed field goal by Grambling never really knocked on the door. And then Ohio University, pretty much the same thing. They got a field goal and then a broken play,
Big play.
Well, catch and then broken play after the catch for a touchdown. And otherwise, Ohio State's handled their business on defense. They put the D in business. I knew I'd be able to use that some form or fashion one of these days, but they do put the D in business when it takes care of taking care of their business on defense. And then offensively, Julian Sayin is making his 4th start. Forget about where it is, making his 4th start. Much more aware of things, much more familiar, he has much more of the confidence of the coaching staff that they can call A, B, C, or D, and he can do it all, or a lot more of it. Let's put it that way. But everything's tailored to who you're playing, et cetera. So when you're going against a team that plays a lot of man defense, you got to get your wide receivers involved, especially when they're talented like Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. So I think that's where it's going. So you got anything else to say before I move to this conversation with Pat Chun?
I want to hear from Pat because he's beloved by both of us, and I'm just happy and proud of his success. And he's going to entertain my old cohort, Obi Stillwell, who's also going to Seattle. They became friends way back.
Yep.
Talked with Obi last night, and he said very excited about just being around him and kind of finding out what UW is all about.
Yep. Well, here we go. Look who I've rounded up. Pat Chun, Athletic Director at the University of Washington. Pat Chun, former associate athletic director, however how you divvy that up at Ohio State before he struck out on his own and went to Florida Atlantic as the athletic director, and then went to Washington State as the athletic director, and then did what's known in, I think, the state of Washington as the Apple Cup switcheroo.
Yeah.
And ended up at the University of Washington just in time to help the University of Washington athletics guide them into the Big Ten Conference. Pat Chun, once again, welcome back to the Tim May Show.
Tim, always a pleasure to be with you. And I was giving you a crap earlier. You're a terrible retiree, but
yeah.
but I think but your expertise in this field does not go away. So it's fun. It'll be fun to see hopefully you and a bunch of Buckeyes here in our stadium this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm headed that way, man. For some reason, I'm headed west, young man. But I wanted to get right into it, Pat. I mean, here's Ohio State playing Washington for the first time as a Big Ten member in football. And what are your emotions right now? Because man, you cut your teeth at Ohio State. You were in the running for the athletic directorship here just like a year and a half ago. And you know where my backing was on that, but I've gotten to really like and enjoy Ross Bjork, who they ended up hiring. But here you are, you're running this big time program out there on the West Coast, all the challenges. But I don't know, what are your emotions as Ohio State gets ready to play at University of Washington?
Well, we got Scotty Graham on staff here, and he put out a nice tweet yesterday, and we're both obviously very proud of our upbringing and would not be where we're at without our time at Ohio State. So I'm going to quote Scotty. It's going to be a great day. I mean, it's fun. I mean, I woke up this morning with a text from Ryan Miller. He sent me his interception against Damon Heward, who's actually on our staff. I think in the 94, 95, or maybe the 94 game that was here. So I'm excited. I mean, it's good to reconnect. I've heard from a lot of people I've not heard from in a long time that are going to make the trip up here. Former football players, a lot of supporters of Ohio State. So if anything, for me personally, it'll be a fun week. And then obviously the game's a huge opportunity for us to get the number one team here in the country. And, we're a program that's trying to ascend, and you got the Buckeyes here, and there's no better team to try to knock off than the number one team in the country and defending national champs.
And by the way, before I follow up on what you just said, I do want to say, send Ryan Miller a picture of the scoreboard at the end of that game. That was that interception is about the only thing that went right, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think that game put Napoleon Kaufman in the Heisman race.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to what you just said. I mean, it is interesting when the number one team in the country comes to town, no matter who it is, things go off the chart a little bit, right? I mean, I know y'all are expecting a ridiculous crowd. I remember when Ohio State played at Notre Dame a couple of years ago. I swear there were twice as many people at the tailgates who ended up in the game, the tailgate ceremony or festivities that ended up in the game. I mean, people were leaving in droves before the kickoff. But what kind of atmosphere do you expect there on Saturday?
So we're sold out, and we pride ourselves in being the loudest stadium in college football. I think with the decibel record is still set here. It's just the way the stadium's designed. There's two awnings that kind of cover both sides of the field, so it pushes the sound, and so that creates the noise. And obviously with the water right next to us, that's what kind of gives the greatest setting. So we're a pro sports town. We got the Mariners are hot this week. The Seahawks are off to a good start, but we're the oldest team in town when it's all said and done. There was a time and place when Seattle didn't have these pro sports, so the level of loyalty is pretty unique to UW. And I mean, like any, and you know this better than most. When the Buckeyes come to town, you get that school's absolute best. From not only the team on the field, but the fans in the stands and the students. So they're going to get our absolute best because there's just a level of excitement to have the Buckeyes here. But it'll be fun because, we think this will be the loudest place that it'll be as loud as it can be for any college football game here on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, on a day like this, when it's supposed to just be jam-packed and stuff, where do you park your yacht there? As you look out from the press box, you look to the right, to the east.
You look. So there's the greatest.
There it
setting.
is.
There's water. I can't get my balance right. There's water there. We actually have docks there. We have water taxis that you can anchor and come in. I've heard from some Buckeyes directly that have rented boats to fully embrace all the sailgating. So it's a pretty unique atmosphere to us. Obviously, it gets pretty festive out there with all the traditions of people coming in on boats. But it's a scene like any other. And the weather right now it looks like a picture perfect day for Seattle. So it'll be a fun afternoon out there, but it's going to be whoever rented boats. You're not going to regret making that decision to come in that way for a college football game.
Yeah, I've been blessed, lucky, whatever you want to call it, because I'm a huge college football fan to have been there 3 times. 86, 94, and I think 07, I think was the last trip. Matter of fact, Brian Hartline was recounting that trip. You might have been on that trip.
I was on that trip. That was my first time here. That was actually my first time here. I think Hartline had a good game. I think Washington went 0 for that year. Tyrone Willingham's maybe last year.
Yeah.
So I remember Hartline had a really good game that day. Todd Beckman was the quarterback. So that feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it does feel like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
It's just Brian Hartline. He reminisced about catching a fish in Pike Place Market.
Okay. He's got the hands. He's got the hands to do that.
Absolutely. He should have been a fishmonger. He should have been a fishmonger. Instead, isn't that amazing, Pat? I mean, you're still a young man, but isn't it amazing that that guys that you helped deal with the media and all that kind of stuff way back, like what was that? What was that? 20 years ago, right? Yeah, almost 20 years ago. He's offensive coordinator at Ohio State. I mean, it is kind of crazy how life moves along, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's that's part of the fun of this week, and it'll be good to see Brian. It'll be good to see James Laurinaitis. We got Michael Brewster on staff here. He's our assistant offensive line coach. Scotty Graham's on staff here. So there's a lot. There's a unique, having been one that was fortunate to be around that program for such a long time, and just the quality of young men that always end up at Ohio State. Especially during my time there when Coach Trussell was there. Those are all the fun pieces. Like college football, at the end of the day, I remind everyone, is about connection and connectivity. And, these games ultimately are an excuse for people to get together and celebrate. And for some of us in this building, me, Scotty, and Michael Brewster, we're going to see a lot of familiar faces come Saturday. And I think we're all excited to see some familiar faces.
Absolutely. By the way, when Don James, I was talking to Don James, the legendary former head coach out there, started, I think, at Kent State. Matter of fact, was Nick Saban's head coach at Kent State way back when, right? But But the bottom line is, I was talking to him one time in '86 before Ohio State played out there, and I asked him what it was like, why he never moved back to Ohio, and he described the same way you just turned your camera. he described looking out his window and looking at Mount Rainier off in the distance. It was a
yeah.
perfectly clear day.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's one of the reasons why, and blah, blah, blah. It was because it is kind of an outpost, but it's a beautiful outpost, right?
It's a beautiful outpost. You just made me think of it when I was at Washington State. Mike Leach was our coach, and he's really close to Urban Meyer, and he worked for Bob Stoops. He used to always tell me, all you Ohioans think football coaching starts and ends in the state of Ohio. So Don James, a great Ohioan from Massillon, Ohio. Obviously, his legacy in college football is so unique because it carried on through Nick Saban and through all the guys. And you hear like all the things that you've learned about Nick Saban. Actually, a lot of them are derived from Don James, especially with how meticulous he is, attention to detail. I talked to Jim Haycock, but when I took this job, to give me some Don James stories, and he told me he was scared the heck out of Don James, and just because he was a taskmaster as a head coach, and how good he was to him after he'd retired. So but yeah, there's something special about Seattle. We love it here. I appreciate your support for, whenever Gene announced his retirement, but the good Lord works in mysterious ways, and we ended up where we're supposed to be. And, this is a very, very, it's a vibrant town. It's an old town that's become a tech town with Amazon and Google and a whole bunch of tech companies here. So it's interesting as Seattle, as the world has changed, it's interesting to see how Seattle has changed with it. I think you'll see for all the Buckeyes, including you, when you land at SeaTac, you'll figure out quickly that this city never thought it would get this big. That's why the airport is like in constant construction, because they're trying to figure out how to maximize, a landlocked region of the country.
Yeah, it reminded me of DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. When they first built it, was in the middle of nowhere between Dallas and Fort Worth. And then all of a sudden, people started moving around it, building houses and stuff. And then I remember for one runway they were putting in, they had a group complain about the airplane noise. And I go, well, if you move next to an airport, there's probably going to be airplane noise. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
SeaTac is almost landlocked now, or it is landlocked,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's pretty funny because it's right off the sound or wherever the water is there, a little ways for it. I've landed there a million times on Flight Simulator.
Okay, good.
for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And of course, we flew out there on our own planes back then with the dispatch, and it took all day to get there. But boy, was it beautiful when we landed. And I remember coming back from a trip. Our pilots just flew out over, and we flew right over what was left of Mount St. Helens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty cool having your own airplane sometimes.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Well, let's get into having your own airplane real quick. How many sports is University of Washington? How many of y'all support varsity sports?
We got 22 sports here, roughly, give or take 500 student athletes. We pride ourselves. If you watch the movie Boys in the Boat, I mean, we're one of the top rowing programs, men and women in the country. Our women's sports have a long history of success. With volleyball, women's basketball, softball. I mean, we've won national championships in softball and golf. So, it's interesting. When we came into the Big Ten and we started talking about the Big Ten, I've reminded everyone we've actually been a Big Ten school for a long time. High research, high academics, placing a premium on football, and then also, supporting, multiple sports at the highest level. So so for those who haven't been here or those who haven't been here for a long time, this will feel like the only difference with us and most of the other Big Ten schools is we're a key part of a major market. So obviously Seattle's a huge, is a huge TV market for the Big Ten. But when you walk around our campus, it's going to feel like a Big Ten campus because you have a lot of old historic buildings, a lot of history with this university and a school that has a love affair with its football program.
Absolutely, man. You got and like you said, you got the setting there in and around the water, which is crazy because y'all are.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah. 100 years ago, someone made the decision. The campus actually used to be downtown, and someone had the foresight to put this football field right next to the water. And because of that, we got coined the greatest setting. And, it's a point of pride for this university that, we're one of the rare places that you can actually tailgate. And on a perfect day like today, and what hopefully it's going to be on Saturday, the views are going to be breathtaking for everybody.
Wait, did you just say Sailgate? Is that
Sailgate? Yes, sailgating.
Sailgate.
So
I really, really, really like that. Now, you know, on the old Intangi, they could put some boats in, you know, at Ohio State and Sailgate or Motorboat Gate. But I digress. Real quick, though,
Yeah.
Pat, because I don't want to keep you, you're a busy man, but what is the biggest challenge you as an athletic director? Obviously, I've talked to Ross Bjork a bunch about these kind of things too. And it's not so much, you know how you used to fundraise for Ohio State? You were excellent at it. You know, I think that helped you get to where you are today, to be honest with you. I think you would agree. But the building those consolidations with fans, with donors, et cetera. But man, it's got to be a never ending. Is it a never ending chore now? How would you describe it?
Well, you know, Ross and I both represent the Big Ten on this House Implementation Committee. And this post-House world was supposed to create some order, and it just has been slow to get built. The challenge for most of the schools in and around college football is, and we're no different than most, is we need enforceable rules and regulations. So prior to the House settlement, there were no rules and regulations. The schools that could figure out how to get the most money could build the biggest rosters. And if you had the right coach, you can win. The hope is, at least if, you know, post-House world, that we could get some rules that could be enforced again. But I think that's really the big challenge is right now is we're just, you can't tell me a business, a sports league that has zero regulations. And we're kind of in purgatory now because we know there are rules that have been approved and passed, yet there's no enforcement of these rules, which is what it's been like the last few years. And I think that's the greater challenge. And you got many schools in our conference that have a lot of history and tradition that understand what happens if you fall backwards in football. I think you're watching it in real time with UCLA. They haven't been the same program for a couple of decades, and they're looking up at the sky trying to figure out how do we solve this problem. And you know, those are hard problems to solve. And in 2025, the answers are more complicated than they've ever been. So like everybody, it's like we're all conscientious of what our business model looks like, how important football is to the DNA of our school and a source of pride for our school. And it's just so complicated now just because you need resources. There aren't any rules. We're fortunate. We're supported by a lot of philanthropy in our community. We're fortunate with, you know, we have a lot of successful alums, but you know, we have schools and one down the road that have, you know, one person that can help a lot of issues that they have. And, you know, most schools don't have that one person. So that's why we just need, you know, and Ohio State's going to be no different, as we're all better off with rules and regulations. And that's where we got to get to again. Yes, and Congress is the only one that can help us with that. Period.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that in real quick. By the way, you just touched on it. You know, the Nike connection for the University of Oregon. Yes, University of Oregon, right? Not Oregon.
Yeah. Yes.
University of Oregon. It's great to have a guy who, instead of saying how much, says how much you need. You know, that's big, but you know, it is what it is. Like you said, it's I don't know if it's a wild west anymore. It's almost like space, the new frontier.
Yeah, it is, because we're in the west right now, and
and
it doesn't feel like the wild west. You're right; it does feel like space. The unknown frontier is what we've all been navigating these last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think y'all will get guardrails? I'm tired of that term, but guardrails is more of like when people crash, it keeps them from going off the edge of the road. More of like train tracks. Do you think there will be train tracks 10 years from now guiding college football? Because I've always said this, Pat, everybody wants their independence. Everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to be able to kind of do what they want to do. You know what I mean? The SEC and the Big Ten are going to, you know, break off and form their own thing. You still got to have rules, right? You still got to have somebody enforcing things, right? I mean, so how long is it till we get to that, you think?
Well, you and I are, you know, I remind people, like, I'm still young enough where I remember when I was a kid, Major League Baseball was as popular, more popular than the NFL.
Yes.
And you watch NFL do a great job of protecting and growing its game. And you watch Major League Baseball have scandal after scandal after scandal and not enforce rules. You lose public trust, and all of a sudden you're looking up at NFL, college football, NBA, and maybe even college basketball to a certain degree. So I just remind everyone of that. Like, if we don't get to a place where we can correct ourselves, we do need to, we can't help ourselves in college athletics. We race to the bottom as fast as possible because of the recruiting piece. What separates us from the pro leagues is we don't have a draft. We have to recruit for new players. And that's really what creates all this angst in terms of what's the route to acquire players. So there's I think there are big things at stake, and we're fortunate to be in the Big Ten. I think for both, for all 18 schools, is wherever the world heads, the Big Ten will have a stake in whatever that world is. But I also recognize and what has made college football so special is all the parts of the country that have been affected by it, and where rivalries used to have meaning. Hopefully they still have meaning, but we need rules and regulations yesterday. And like every day we go, I talked to one of our senators who's very influential in Washington. And I remind her there's not a Division I school in the state that can't survive with rules and regulations, and we need them tomorrow, not a month from now.
Hey, by the way, were you nervous when you appeared before Congress there for that? When you were still at the other, what do y'all call it?
So just to educate you on the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
So actually, I told you this when I saw you at Big Ten Media Days.
But
we look at Oregon. So Oregon is our team up north, even though the team south of us. And then you would consider Washington State what Michigan would consider Michigan State. So that's kind of what it is. So when I was at Washington State, I did have to testify in Congress about name, image, and likeness, and being in these roles, you don't get nervous, but in that one, I really was. Simply because I'd never been in that type of setting. They scare the heck out of you in all the prep because they remind you like it's still a little bit of political theater. There's a lot of questions that have nothing to do with NIL, so that's what they prep you for. So then you're just sitting there thinking, all right, I just can't say anything that's going to get me fired from my job. So but it's all those life experiences that ultimately, if you can survive, they make you better. But you know me well enough to know that was not a fun day to sit in front of Congress and testify. Like Gene Smith had to do it, and I promise you, Gene was cool as a cucumber when he did it.
yeah, exactly. I did want to ask you this though. Back when you were at Washington State, you were not advocating, but I mean, y'all were on the, what do you want to call it? The other side of the NIL kind of thing. Once you get to University of Washington, I would think it gave you new appreciation, may not be the correct term, but that's the word I'm going to use for how the haves have it. Right. I mean, the dichotomy is crazy, isn't it? I mean,
I just spoke about it like the other day. Like we have to get back to a place, and this is why we need structure in college sports, and it's all because of the player acquisition piece. Because we don't draft, we have to go sign high school players or go to the portal and get players. We have to get back to a place where when you hire the right coach who can hire the right staff, and they do this extraordinary job of identifying, recruiting, and developing players, that should always be the advantage in college sports. And you just go through history. I remind everybody look at the University of Washington. It's what Chris Peterson did extraordinarily well. It's what Don James did extraordinarily well. It's what we believe Jed Fish is doing extraordinarily well. Like it's scary. Like when you look at Ryan Day's record right now, how impressive that is with the exception of one opponent. I mean, it's scary how good he's been, but the reality, him, Coach Meyer, Coach Tressel, Coach Cooper, all did an exceptional job of identifying talent, bringing them to campus, and developing. Ryan's challenge is very different than what Urban, Tress, and Coop had to deal with. Yep. But the reality is that's what college football in its essence needs to get back to. It can't be like the schools with the most money win. And it's got to be the schools that spend their money the best, but also have a coach that can really bring out the best in these young people. That's still what the magic of college football needs to be, and I hope we can get back to that place.
Yeah, the problem is wrangling in what I call the upper elite. I'm talking about people with money and convincing them of that. I mean, I think it will be a smaller world in terms of members who are Division I. It's almost like Division III, where Division I. Remember they had the FBS, the FCS, and then that one level that didn't give scholarships. I mean,
correct. Yeah.
I mean,
Division I. You're right. Division I is too big. FBS is too big. Yeah. The reality is Ohio State has nothing in common with Akron, Toledo,
Correct.
Kent, Cincinnati, even Cincinnati. Ohio State has nothing in common with Cincinnati. So that's really the challenge. We're in this state. We have, FCS Eastern Washington,
Yep.
Pac-12 Washington State. Washington really doesn't have much in common. Now, Washington and Ohio State have more in common than less in common, and that's just the reality where college football is at today.
Gotcha.
And how do you fix all that is the question.
Well, yeah, exactly. You need to not only be the athletic director at University of Washington, but be elected as a senator, not a congressman, or representative, but as a senator. You understand what that means.
Yes.
By the way, I've come up as we were talking here, I just came up in my head of how I describe now the Big Ten. I will describe the Big Ten from now on. The original, the 12, whatever you want to call it, I don't know how many was it? 14, really. The 14 were sort of the lower 48 states of the United States. And then Oregon and Washington are the Alaska acquisition. And UCLA and USC are sort of Hawaii, but they're still states. You understand? I mean, we're still in the United States. That's kind of what it looks like, right?
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, it has grown on me fast. As you sit here right now, does this have staying power? This 18-team league, which may move to 20 sometime, who knows what? But does it have staying power the way it's laid out? I mean, in your mind?
Yeah, I think we got to figure out scheduling. That's really the big thing. I think we talked about in our last AD meetings about really trying to model to see what the NFL is doing, simply because we're a national league. We go coast to coast. So really, it all comes down to, as long as we can figure out what, and I use this term loosely, equitable scheduling looks like, which is really hard to do because you don't play everybody in your own league in a given year. So it's hard to have equitable scheduling. But I think that as long as we can get there, and I'm confident we can get there. And then the reality is, we like being in this league. I think, the oddity is Washington has more in common with Big Ten schools than we had in the old Pac-12 schools.
Right.
Like we have more in common with Ohio State and Michigan State than we do Utah, Colorado, Arizona State. So as a university, just because we're a big research university, that's high academics. So we have more in common than with the rest of the Big Ten schools. And this is really, if anything, this is probably a snapshot of where college football is headed, because we're stable today. Who knows what will destabilize with college football? But you're going to see all the best brands are going to have to consolidate, because that's really where the world's at right now.
Absolutely. Real quick, is it important, though, like you just touched on this without even saying it out loud? I think it's important, even if you're in a league of 18 teams, I think it's important that you play maybe 2 or 3 of the same teams every year to give you kind of a bite of what, I mean, I know the big deal is everybody get to go to the different, everybody gets to see every stadium in the league at least once in 4 years. But I think it's important for you to at least have some kind of common, like Ohio State, Michigan, some kind of common, theme there, like you guys in Oregon, or you guys in USC, or you guys in State,
I thought what the SEC did was good. I think, what is it, a 5-year commitment to play the same 3 opponents?
Yeah.
I actually think there's merit in what they did. And I think those are some conversations we'll have, obviously, in upcoming Big Ten meetings, because we're going to have to figure out now that everybody's at nine conference games plus a mandated Power 4 game, we don't have that mandate. My assumption is we'll get there. And then what does that look like relative to the totality of the schedule?
Gotcha. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Chun. Pat Chun, thanks for joining the Tim May Show again. It was not the first time. It won't be the last time, because I'm sure I'll be rolling up to the microphone again here in a few years. What I'll be rolling in will be the big question. Hey, but I'm looking forward to coming to Seattle, my brother.
Yeah, we'll see you this weekend.
You got it.
All right. Thanks, Tim.